Hi and welcome to another how-to. During winter it's really hard for the smaller birds to find food, and I have a soft spot for birds for some reason, so I thought I'd make them some bird feed, and not just bird seed. But we will start out with bird seed, and then we'll add some cheap bread. This is the cheapest one I could find, and also some old bread I've been keeping around. And I cleaned out my pantry and found some peanuts and walnuts. We'll be throwing all of this into some rapeseed oil, because that's the cheapest one I can find. Also some cheap margarine, and I'll add some scraps of pork fat as well. First things first, just melt down the margarine. It's quite an accomplishment to do this, I would say. It takes longer than you think. In the end, we'll get there, though. The more of the margarine that's in contact with the melted margarine, the faster it goes. Then we add the vegetable oil. I only add half of this bottle, it's a liter, because I was thinking that all the pork scraps would compensate or add up to the bulk. Throwing in a hefty chunk of pork fat scrap. But it turns out that these did not melt as fast as I had hoped. 15 minutes later, I decided to pick them out, because they did not do what I expected of them. I'll see if I can't reuse them as is for some other bird feed. But for now, I'm not putting them back into this type of bird feed. So out they go, every single bit of them. Instead, I just add back in the rest of the vegetable oil. I started adding the bread directly like this, but I should have figured out that it would splash quite a bit of hot oil. So I devised a new strategy where I put it in a simple bowl first, and then from there I add it back into the pot. This still produced quite a bit of splashing, but it was much more manageable. And as soon as you get the first bread in there, it becomes less prone to splash. Also, I decided to hold the bowl a lot closer to the boiling fat or the hot fat. This also, of course, reduced the splattering. So be careful if you do this to not get hot oil all over you. And in with the nuts. Then it's time for the bird seed. I'm not sure how much I need, so I add roughly half of this to see what the consistency will be. It really doesn't add that much though, so I decided to chuck the rest of it in as well. and bird seed is pretty cheap, so it's no big deal to throw a bit more in there. Then we start adding bread. This is just some really cheap white toast that had gone not only stale but moldy as well. The birds don't care though, they eat it just as fine. I add this in chunks as well, because I'm not really sure what the consistency will be. The white bread is really good at soaking up all that fat though. The rye bread isn't really good for that. That's more filler of sorts. But in the end, I used up all of this white toast. And we're getting there. The consistency is starting to look good. We're looking for sort of a porridge consistency. As you can see, this is more like it. And fortunately enough, that's all the bread I had, so it worked out just fine. Then we put it outside to cool down. It's -4 or 5 degrees Celsius outside, so it's gonna cool down just fine. When it's cooled down, it's time to put it into the actual feeders. I have had these ones for I can't remember for how long, many years, as you can see by the state of them. I think they cost me like 100 Swedish kronas or something like that. It's like 12 bucks. And they're quite resilient. And this is frozen solid now, as you can see. It's been outside for perhaps a week or something. And this is in my opinion, the easiest way to handle it, because as you can see, you can scrape it up and then you form chunks or balls of it, which you just then shove right into the feeder. If it's too warm, then it's really sticky and gooey. It's sticky enough as it is, so you need to have it frozen. And make sure that you jam it in there, so that the birds can get to it. I try to keep the feed inside the meshing by using my hand to shield it. Rinse and repeat, fill it all the way up. Add the cap. And these are not really needed, because the really small birds, they just cling onto the mesh and feed from there. Yeah, and then we do the same with the second feeder. It's not really rocket science. I've decided to hang the feeders in my maple tree. To the right you can see one swinging about, and the second one, it's kind of hard to see, but it's in the center of the frame right now. It's easier to spot later on, but there it is, right in the middle of the screen. My apologies for the smudge. I didn't notice this until I've recorded the footage. Fortunately enough, the feeders are somewhat visible still. And there you can see the second feeder to the right, just right of the Swedish flag of my neighbors. Yeah, there it is. And here I cleaned up the lens, as you can see. And they are quite popular. From the time I put these out to when I got around making this video, I've had a number of visitors, even woodpeckers have decided that this is much easier than to actually peck wood, I would guess. And none of the birds have died. I hope you enjoyed this and got inspired to help out the birds this winter. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye bye.